Hi, and welcome to a new episode of The Naked Truth with Dirk Klein. This is, I believe, my seventh episode. Um, so, just want to first of all want to apologize for any background noise you might hear because there's some work going around my outside my house and I have the window open because at the moment we are experiencing something of a heat wave in Ireland. Yes, I know it sounds a bit bizarre, but yes, it's in Ireland. We have a heat wave. Temperatures drop to and above 30 degrees Celsius. And it's been like that for the last few days. And so, yeah, so if you hear any background noises, it's because my window's open for some bit of cool air and there's some work going on outside my house as well. So I apologize for that. Now, this episode I'm going to dedicate to a Dutch reporter, Peter Vries. He was actually shot on July 15th, and he died a few days afterwards. And this actually his funeral is today. I believe it's going to be like a private funeral with just family members, which I completely understand. No, um, probably some of you will wonder, well, who is this Peter out of Vries? Now, let me just share a picture of him, see if this will work. One second. No, that's him. That's Peter out of Vries. As I said, he was a Dutch reporter. He was an investigative reporter. He investigated crimes. His first case he reported was in 1985. It was the kidnapping of Freddie Heineken of the Heineken Brewery, world famous beer, of course. And that's how he got into the spotlight. He was still a young fella at that stage. I think he was only in his, say, his 1956. He was born in 1985. That was his first case. So he was in his 20s. So 20, so it's actually 1983. So he was 27 when he first covered that for the Dutch newspaper, The Telegraph. So yeah, and ever since that case, more or less has followed him throughout his career, throughout his life, because a few other cases emerged from that, especially some of the people who were who had been convicted by had, had been convicted for this case, for this kidnapping. He followed through his years as well because they'd done a few more things as well. No, I'm not going to mention names here except for only Peter Vries and maybe some of his victims because I don't want to get into trouble myself. But you can read up on him anyhow. So it's Peter Vries is his name. Yeah, and just check the Heineken case. And it's amazing when you read up on it. Now, the reason why I'm doing this Naked Truth episode on him now, because of course there were many other journalists, people I could have done a broadcast on, but I decided to go for him basically because I know him personally. Unfortunately, through some cases which I got dragged into via some people that were near to me. Uh, and was a murder case of Jessica Richel in the Netherlands, and for some reason I'm not going to go into too much details. I got involved in the investigation. Well, not so much involved, but I was kind of asked as a more of a character witness for some person who was actually arrested for the murder, who turned out to be completely innocent. DNA had proven that, and also later on they actually found the actual killer. But that's how I got to know Peter initially, because that person who was arrested for that. He passed away shortly afterwards, and I believe maybe because of some embarrassment issues or some shame he had, even though there's no reason for it whatsoever. But sometimes you don't know how people react on traumatic things in their lives. So, and that's how that's when and I sent Peter an email about this and said, well, on this case is known another victim who died as well, and I kind of um, partially blamed his team for it because they hadn't done their research properly, in my view, and that's what I tried to explain to him. No, and I sent the email, and actually I was out for work at the time in Munich. I was on some business trip in Munich, and I never forget the time I was in my hotel room, and I got a phone call out of the blue from Peter Vries, and he said he was shocked to hear the news of my friend, and he also said, well, he didn't believe it was we could blame his team for not doing the research properly, but he could see why I would think that. And but he had a good chat. He was very friendly about it, and we talked for about an hour, and he did say, well, listen, even though um, I don't think the blame could be put on him or the research team, he would put out an apology and to the family of my friend to say sorry for any issues that he might cause them. And of course, most of it's skeptical. I thought he's just saying this because he's talking to me now, and that's never going to happen. And of course, I was, even though I was in Germany at the time, I was living in Ireland. So, and he was in the Netherlands. So I thought, I mean, I will never find out if he does or doesn't. But true to his word, he posted a whole article in the Panorama, which is a current affairs magazine in the Netherlands, which he was writing for, and he put down the an actual apology to the family, and he said sorry, and to me that shows a character that he actually did follow his word, and because I followed him then afterwards as well on his cases, and that seems to be the man. Anyhow, he always would follow up, and he would never forget anything about any of his cases, and yeah, so even though uh, I got to know him through some traumatic events. It was good that he actually did follow up on that with me, and on uh, other people. Most of you people will probably know of the case of Natalie Holloway, the disappearance of Natalie Holloway. She was a young girl. I think she was. Let me check now. Not making a liar out of me, because I actually had it open here. I have to Google it myself this stage, even though I've done my research. But sometimes in this heat, my brain just goes mush, and I forget sometimes what I was going to say. Yes, Natalie Holloway, she disappeared in Aruba in May 30th, 2005. She was a young girl. She was in her 20s at that stage as well. I think she was still a teenager. She was 19 or 18. Actually, she wasn't her birthday yet. So, and she mysteriously she disappeared, and it made international news because there was a Dutch guy. He was suspected of killing her, but the body was actually never found. Um, so, but for some reason, Peter de Vries got involved in this, and he actually in 2006, I think it was, all this later. Well, a few years later, uh, Peter de Vries said he had solved the case. Actually, 2008, he said he had solved the case. And I remember it. I remember it well because he said, "I'm going to show how I did it. I'm going to show the show on TV how I solved the case and what he did." He had lured um, the suspect uh, into confessing the murder. Well, at least to an extent. Well, what he did, he set up a scheme where he got to where he used another ex-convict, and he was a friend of the suspect, and but he wasn't this friend. He wasn't too happy about the whole case either. So, and they set up like a hidden camera scheme where he started talking about the case, and your man was saying was giving hints with only the actual perpetrator would have known. So again, I don't want to go too much into too much details of this because it's not my case to talk about. But again, it's something you can look up as Natalie Holloway, and the only way for me to get further into this case is by mentioning the suspect, which I don't want to do. As I said upon the onset, I don't want to get into trouble myself. Uh, but it's a well documented case, and also Peter R. Vries for that program he received an Emmy award, and he was interviewed by Oprah Winfrey afterwards as well. So he got international fame from this as well. I don't think it's something he set out to do, because that's not the type he was. He was not a person to seek international fame. He just wanted to get justice done uh, for the victims, and that was always his only aim. And the fame came with that as well, but not something he actively sought out to do now. And as I said, Natalie Holloway, she disappeared on 30th of May 2005. Now, unfortunately, in that same year, but just before Christmas, um, a cousin of mine went missing, and then a few days after, just after Christmas, actually it was after New Year's. It was actually I think it was January 3rd, 2006. His body was found in the garden of his own house, in his back garden of his own house. His was found by his mother, and it turned out that he was murdered by some sort of poisoning. So he was more or less kidnapped. This is what we know. He was kidnapped before Christmas, and we know he was taken. And this is in the Netherlands. He was taken into Belgium, probably, where it appeared he was roughed up first, and then he was poisoned. And afterwards, they just dumped his body into this back garden as if it was just some garbage they had dumped there. Now, again, I don't want to go too much detail. No, I'm not going to say my cousin was an angel, because he wasn't. He was involved in a few things what he shouldn't have been, but that's the reason why probably they think he got killed in the first place, because he wanted to get out of that whole milieu, this whole environment. He wanted to redeem himself, and for some people that was not going to happen. Now, again, this case has never been solved, even though they know, have a good indication of who is behind the murder. And it's something, again, I don't want to talk about because I don't want to jeopardize any ongoing investigations. And but yeah, but at some stage the case cut to the halt because the police couldn't do anything anymore. And that's where I thought, well, hang on, I know people. I know an investigator who does who has quite some resources behind him. So I then asked Peter Otto Vries to have a look into it. Now, my cousin's mother had already asked him as well to have a look into it, and he said no. He was not interested in the case as such. And then I thought, well, let me give it a go. So I sent him an email, and within a few days, I got first one email back personally from him saying, "Listen, I'm going to look into this for you." And then he called me as well, and again we had a chat, and I explained the reasoning behind why I contacted him, and he said, "No, you've right," and he was totally fine with that. Say, "Well, rightfully so," he said. I would have done the same thing, and we spoke about the case a small bit, and I said, "Well, I don't have all the details, but please do contact my cousin's mother. Actually, was my second cousin, so his mother was my cousin." Um, and of course she's heartbroken by it. She still is. Um, and yeah, it's a lady I admire greatly, really, because her father, my uncle, he used to have he used to be a coal merchant, and back in the 60s, 70s, all coal mines and metals closed down, and but they still had some business and some contracts to finish up, and I think the last one finished up back somewhere in the 80s. So for nearly 2 decades, they still had some contracts that needed to adhere to, and the last one finished up in the 80s, and they had no one there at that stage to help them deliver coal to some of the clients. So they asked me to help. It was only myself and my cousin and two other cousins, to all her sisters, three women and me in the truck delivering coals. And the power of these women and the physical strength was just unbelievable. And ever since that day, I've had a great respect for them. So yeah, so needless to say, I was distraught by the murder of my second cousin as well, and that's why I thought, well, um, use the resources I have as well. And I asked Peter Artifries to look into it. Now, and he's done that. And unfortunately, now that's not going to happen anymore either, because, as I said, he was killed. He was murdered um, by, well, they have two people in custody. One, I think, is a Romanian guy or Polish guy living in Amsterdam. He was the driver, and a Dutch fella. He is the shooter, but he was also in his 20s, a useless piece of work in my eyes. Um, he actually had been in some talent show. I think it was called "So You Think You Can Dance." It's where dancers show up. It's a bit like the X Factor or The Voice, but only for dancers. Then it's a Dutch show. He actually uh, was a contestant there, and clearly he didn't make it. So he was useless as a dancer, and he was not. Since he was caught as a hitman, clearly he isn't very good in his job there either. And he also wanted to be a hip hop star or rapper. So a, a little. No, I won't say the words I'm thinking of now, because I want to keep it as clean as possible. Even though I find it very hard, because throughout the years I did get fond of Peter Artifries, and I did see him as a man of integrity, and the fact that he did offer to help and did actually help, and also that he apologized um, to the family of my friend at the time and to me, I thought uh, shows the character of a man. He didn't have to. He did not have to call me. Actually, he actually had called my wife first, because well, he rang my home number at that time, and of course I wasn't home, and my wife gave him my mobile number. That's how he called me in my Munich hotel. So, and just the fact that he did do that, I think that shows enough who the man was and what he stood for. And I think it's such a shame, such a pity that a man just doing his job, because the murder seems to be a gang related. It seems to be gang related hit, because he did investigate other crimes as well. Of course, he also investigated corruption in the Dutch police in 2006. So he must have had a lot of enemies, and he was actually killed after partaking in a show called RTL Boulevard, which is more like a glossy kind of magazine kind of show, some entertainment, uh, some entertainment show really, but they do cover crimes in it as well every once in a while. So, and he would often be on that show. And after he finished filming there, he left. He walked through a main square or main street in Amsterdam, and then he was shot once in the head, and I think was three times in the chest. He did hang on for about 9 days, but he eventually did succumb to his injuries, which I think it's a pity. So, but through this episode of Naked Truth, I want to thank him for what he has done for me and my family. And I hope his work will continue. That someone will pick up his work, not only for me but for others, because justice needs to be served to people who need it. So I say, Peter, rust in vrede, en hopelijk gaat je werk gewoon door. So yeah, I felt I had to say a few Dutch words there as well. So no, that was it for this episode. Now, please follow me on learnmedia.tv, or you can follow me on my own YouTube channel as well, of course, and of course on my website, History of Swords, or if you type in dirkdecline.net, that will bring you there as well. So there's a lot of information there on history, all sorts of history, mainly World War II and Holocaust, but there's stuff on music as well, and crime, and anything to do with history, and more or less my point of view on something. So if you like these kind of issues, then please do to look up my website and subscribe to it as well. It's free, totally free. Same for the learmedia.tv YouTube channel. It's free, so it won't cost you anything, and you'll get lots of free information, lots of very entertaining information, and lots of good and properly researched data as well. So if you're interested in current affair, history, or even music or entertainment, please do follow us on learnmedia.tv, on our YouTube channel, or as I said, on History of Swords, or on my own YouTube channel. So thank you for listening and watching. So hopefully we'll see you soon again. Slán, as I say in Ireland.